Hey ho, y'all, patreon.com/music is not a genre. And yeah, if you're on there, you're like, why am I repeating that? And it's because, as I've said for some of these recent bonuses, there's a good chance that this one in particular, I am going to share with the public at some point. I don't share them all. There are a couple that come to mind that I may never share, but this one I'm definitely going to share at some point. So if you are out in the wild and you're getting this, it's because I love you and want you to get, fun new things and to know what is at patreon.com/music is not a genre. These are the kind of bonus episodes you get. And what is this bonus episode? It's related to season 8, episode 10 on nostalgia and how nostalgia is the silent killer. And this is a subtopic of that, which has to do with how nostalgia can kill music careers. And so, now, not every music career. If you are a cover band, nostalgia is for you. That's not what I'm talking about. The careers of music creators. Let's say that. So nostalgia might be seen as relatively harmless for fans. Again, that depends on how much you indulge and how much you make an effort to stay current. I argue that is not harmless for fans because they're missing out on good music, living in the past. But that was the main episode, so we don't need to go into that. And I'll also say, though, that fan nostalgia saps money from people making new music. They will rebuy and re-listen to and re-stream and whatever it is, all the old stuff they like, and good luck getting them to listen to a new song. It might not, strictly speaking, be harmful to the fan, which, again, I think in some ways it is, but maybe not strictly speaking. It is for sure harmful to music creators. So then you might be saying, well, wait a second. Well, why don't you meet people where they are or just make nostalgia music? And the answer is it doesn't work. First, because your version will 99% of the time not be enough like the actual old music. And second, because your song is unlikely to be as good as the time-tested songs. And that's because if someone's familiar with the music that they love, it doesn't matter how, a song sounds, a new song, how much it sounds like that old music, it's not as absorbed as the old music. Third, and most importantly, people are almost always nostalgic for specific songs and artists, not just the sound and style of the music itself. So it's incumbent upon artists creating new music, and not as works for hire for, say, period movies or other cases where recreating an old sound is essential, to stay in touch, no matter what you may think of the modern music world. Boy, am I going to get into this. As you know from the main podcast, I fall on the side of nostalgia being a net negative. That said, and as I did in the main episode, it's only fair to flesh out both sides. So we're going to flesh out here how nostalgia affects creativity in music and start, again, with the upsides. How does nostalgia fuel creative power? So, number one, it gives a ready-made emotional palette. Music tied to memory is emotionally pre-charged. You already got it there. When a creator references a style, era, or sonic signature from their past, they tap directly into feelings of comfort, longing, joy, innocence, rebellion, or identity formation. And those songs have instant emotional impact and psychological resonance. It's a good way to use nostalgia in music creation. As I said in the main episode, I'm as inherently nostalgic as anyone. And how I use that is to incorporate elements from past music that I love, that I hope to evoke the feelings of. But there's more to it, so stay with me. Can't just do that. Number two, aesthetic anchors and creative starting points come from nostalgia. Nostalgia is a known language, whether it's a certain chord progression or a certain synth sound or drum machine or the way you process your guitar, the certain types of distortion. Think of how the White Stripes have that certain sound, or how so many bands, from various eras have that 70s sound, or the way you do harmonies or anything like that, the texture, the EQ. Those are good things to get from nostalgia. And one result is it reduces creative paralysis. So instead of starting from zero, like what sounds do I use? How do I process this? Whatever, you start from a familiar motif and expand and then warp or update it. And those are key, and we'll get to more of that later. Having a starting point is so vital. Great example, one of my favorite bands, Fountains of Wayne, or, they're actually touring right now with a replacement for Adam Schlesinger, who died in 2020 and who helped me kick off my Death is Dumb series. I intend to do a full proper episode of Fountains of Wayne actually early in 2026. So stay tuned for that and you'll understand why they're such a great band. But it's been said about Adam Schlesinger, who wrote all those songs and far beyond Fountains of Wayne, that he actually had a template for every song he wrote. So I want this song to sound like this band. And yet, anything you listen to from Fountains of Wayne, you're not going to say, oh God, he was ripping off such and such because he brought no ideas to it. Having those templates help you find your way and understand your objectives and how to achieve them. Well, if I want it to be this kind of song, I don't need a guitar solo, or I need the guitar solo to be linear instead of complex, whatever it is. But again, there is more to it. Another positive is reinvention through contrast. So looking back allows the artist to ask what felt good then and what feels missing now, and how can I exaggerate, twist, or evolve that and recreate that feeling. This is how genres like synthwave, new disco, retro soul, and pop punk revivals emerge. A lot of new artists doing grunge sounds. As I said in the main episode, that's because of this. So nostalgia is a springboard for innovation, not imitation. And this is key. And again, unless I was hired to do a carbon copy of something for a movie or what have you, everything I create otherwise has something about it that updates the old inspiration, that brings it into a dialogue with current music. And this is not the last time I'm going to say that. More than that, and this is probably why I don't have that problem of just boom sounding like somebody else. I never pull from only one or two or even three sources. All of my music has multiple sources, often sources that wouldn't seem to fit together, but I fit them together. So I'm simultaneously evoking all of this older music while creating an amalgam that's never quite existed before. Number 4, cultural and personal identity building is another positive. Early musical influences are often tied to formative experiences. Adolescence, first love, rebellion, some hardship you went through, or some great time you went through, family traditions, cultural heritage. So a result there, you draw on nostalgia, it'll ground you as an artist in a unique identity. These are the things you experienced. And it helps listeners feel that uniqueness, that organic truth of your experience, and connect them with who they really are. It's easier to connect with audiences who don't know your music if you incorporate elements that sound like something they do know. So if you do it well. And let's not forget that everyone is prone to giving the benefit of the doubt to music and artists who've already been proven and who they already know. New music has always been a much tougher sell, as I said before. Final positive here is audience connection and shared memory. Listeners love hearing modern reinterpretations of the music they grew up with. So what happens? Why do they love it? It's a faster emotional connection. Man, does that sound like my favorite artist or band. I'm going to love that song more. Broader appeal, because you're connecting not just with people who like new music, but people who like older music, and a sense of community. We all remember this feeling, or those of us who do. And honestly, this is truly a positive of nostalgia, but to me it is more of a hope than an actual positive, in that it is harder to find fans who understand that true joy comes in the experience of the present. And so discovering a new song, that also connects them to old loves, is actually more alive than constantly going back to the old music and trying to relive those feelings, because it is in the present moment. That's a hard sell. So what are some downsides for music creators? How can it limit your creativity? Well, first of all, over-reliance on imitation. When nostalgia becomes the goal rather than the tool, the music can slip into mimicry, copying production tricks, rehashing structures, repeating nostalgic tropes without deeper meaning. The songs end up feeling derivative or like pastiche. And this is a big, there's a hollowness to it. And three things about this. First, the reality is that audiences love this shit. So that's why so much of it is made. And some of it is great and has substance, and some of it is hollow. But there's a lot of it out there because audiences do love it. Second, if you can do this with a new twist, say how there are just so very, very many young female artists and bands and LGBTQ plus artists and bands putting spins on things like grunge and emo and even 70s and rock and all that stuff. If you can do this like that with that new twist, then you've entered into that modern day dialogue that I'm going to keep mentioning, and you've moved the ball forward. You moved the conversation forward. And the third thing here is I can think of way too many artists in the last 10 to 15 years who have almost exclusively relied on either outright interpolation or outright mimicry in ways that sound very shallow. Reference intended to me, at least most of the time. Some of those songs, there's a substance there that is new, that still evokes the old, where you're like, oh man, I love how those two things are talking to each other in this one song. But the more you do that as an artist, no matter how good you've been at it, the more you're just retreading. Another negative, fear of innovation. Artists sometimes cling to nostalgic sounds because it's safe. They know it. It's marketable. Which they say, oh, you market it to the people who like it, whatever, or they think it's marketable. I'll put it to you that way. And it guarantees an emotional response, which I don't think is actually true. These are the things that artists think when they are clinging to nostalgic sounds. And what happens is there's an avoidance of boundary pushing, and so what? That can be good, can be, pointless. But there's also an avoidance of personal evolution, which is really where the artist and the artist's career dies. And we've seen it from big, big artists. They're trying to recreate a sound. This one podcast I listened to, which, by the way, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be talking about other music podcasts towards the end of 2025. My last episode of 2025 is going to talk a little bit about that, as well as your fan comments. But this one podcast will talk about how so often an artist has a hit with a song, and the producers or the company's idea, and sometimes even the artist's idea, is just do the same thing with a different song. And it almost never works. Sometimes does, but almost never works. I know so many music creators who do this over and over and have done it for so long that their music sounds like the rehashing of the last 2 to 3 songs or albums that they've done. And worse, it sounds dated. And not dated in a kitschy, updatey, retro chic way. Like some artists today, Doechii comes to mind, among many others, where she is using certain elements of, I have said, both early 90s and late 90s or early 2000s hip-hop and meshing them together with things that are happening today. That's different. But these artists that I know are making music that when I listen to it, I feel like it could have just existed in whatever time they stopped growing and stopped listening to and incorporating new music. There's nothing new about it. It's not, there's nothing, it's not moving the conversation forward, and it's not moving their creativity forward. You will 100% not be able to compete or find any measurable success if this is you. If you are an artist who's like, I found my sound, I like it, I'm going to keep it, I'm going to keep, singing about the same things, I'm not going to add any new even like lyrical phrasings or try to expand my melodic palette, whatever, you'll fail. Not a creation. Congratulations, you've created something, and I'm sure there are people who love it. But if you want a career beyond that, you'll fail. You just will. Number 3, nostalgia can be emotionally self-limiting. Nostalgic songwriting can trap artists in a loop of unresolved longing or melancholic themes, or rehashing the same themes over and over. This emotional range compresses. Everything becomes wistful or retro or bittersweet or resentful or whatever it is. I know someone whose songs all sound like slightly mid up tempo EDM, and all of it is about a sense of searching and longing. Some of those songs are amazing, but when every one of your fucking songs is like that, then you have stopped challenging yourself. And I know other artists who their entire thing is I need to be clever with my lyrics and don't ever challenge themselves to be simple. So it can go either way. And you just retread. You just start retreading. So much of what I do is to push myself to go places I haven't been, which is why Rex sound is such an eclectic amalgam and why no two albums sound alike. Doing that also asks you to find new ways to express yourself, which very often call up new subjects and ideas. So if I'm like, oh, I want to add this element from this genre, well, that type of expression, it might work in contrast with what I do, or I might need to modify my expression. And then it helps you avoid rehashing the same subjects and the same sounds. Number 4 of the negatives, audience fatigue. If everyone is referencing the same decades, then people are going to get tired of it. This is why trends die. They're overdone. Nothing new is added. Now, eventually something new is added, and trends that die will come back with some newness to them. But they have to die first often. And the result is the landscape becomes crowded, repetitive, and predictable. Truth bomb. Truth bomb. Ready? Audiences love this. They love keep it coming, keep it coming. And the only time it matters as a creator is when the trends shift. And you're left recreating the old trend that died, and you are completely disconnected from the new trend and have no idea how to create it or connect with it. You should always try to anticipate what's coming. This is why you need to keep listening, because whatever it is you're doing that you think is, oh, it's a trend, yeah, that is eventually going to leave you, or you will leave it. The best answer here is just don't try to be trendy. There's a big difference between incorporating new influences and trend hopping. Incorporating new influences is organic. It's connected to your creative core. It's something you want to do, you're passionate about, you're intrigued by, you want to see how it works with your music. Trend hopping is hollow. It's I want to sound like this because it's popular and it, streamed, 10 million or 100 million streams or whatever it is. It's hollow and it will fail quickly, if not right away. And the final negative here is authenticity pressure. A nostalgic style can feel inauthentic if forced. And the result is the artist feels stuck between honoring the past and being true to who they are now. So if you're like, well, I'm this artist, this is how I sound, I need to keep doing this, that is actually inauthentic, because that's who you were 10, 20 years ago. It's not, or even 5 years ago. It's not who you are now. Figure out who you are now. And if the answer is I'm the same person as I was then you stopped growing then, or stopped considering that you may have grown and you haven't incorporated any of that growth into your music. So it's that idea of that authenticity pressure comes from this one of the episodes I did once was that identity is an illusion. Whether it's the person identity, we create this identity, have some grounding in the world. When we can be and do anything really that's within our reach, and sometimes even beyond that, and the same holds true for artistic expression in music in spades, which is you say you're this kind of artist, you can only do this thing. So I know an artist who is into it's power pop music, and it's not who you think if you're listening, it's somebody else, and they are struggling to come up with new material. And I didn't get deep into the conversation about it, but my gut is because they've been that kind of artist for several albums, and they figure, we got to recreate this, but they've run out of ideas, quote unquote. You never really run out of ideas, but you can tap the well if you continue to pull it from the same source and try to make it sound the same and try it with the same structures, et cetera, et cetera. And my advice, if we had gotten into the conversation, would have been to listen to music that has nothing to do with power pop and pull some of those influences in. It will be lyrically inspiring, musically inspiring, etc. And this is why I never run out of ideas. It just is. So, and it's a summation of what I just said, which is possible to be authentic to your core and retro. It is, but it's much more vital and connected to find your authenticity in today's world and not a world that doesn't exist anymore. Look, I add retro elements to everything I do, partly because you can't not, and partly because I enjoy them. But the sum total, the base of what I do is always connected to what's going on now. And so a summary of all that. First, ways in which nostalgia is really hurting both your creative process and your career. And then secondly, ways you can use nostalgia to reverse that. So productive versus unproductive. Unproductive nostalgia recreates the past without transformation, runs from the present creatively or emotionally, and that last part is as big a killer as the creative part because they are so connected. If you have run from the present, all you can do is try to recreate the past. It reduces the art to referencing instead of expressing. Is your referencing meant to be the substance, or is it in quotes? That's the difference. I have certain things in certain songs where they're meant to evoke. I have one song which sounds nothing like The Cure, and the solo, I referenced a Cure song. And it's meant to do that. But the song in the whole is not recreating The Cure. It feels costume-like rather than lived. That's the kind of music you're making. Productive nostalgia uses the past as a texture, not a template, uses it as grounding and a jumping off point. It reinterprets sound to express modern themes. It blends influences intentionally, which is something I do all the time. It allows emotional depth and forward movement, moving the conversation forward, saying something new one way or another. I told you I'd repeat it. It grounds your identity without trapping it. The main conclusion here is related to the main conclusion from the main episode, which is if you don't have the discipline to use nostalgia as a tool to create grounding in which you feel safer and more empowered to challenge yourself to grow and change and stay organic and true to yourself and who you are now and not who you were, if you don't have that discipline, then stay away from nostalgia. Throw together some things you don't even like as your new song and see what happens. You may trash the whole thing. It may lead to new and amazing direction for you. And again, as I said at the beginning here, it's far worse for creators to indulge in nostalgia than it is for the fans. We as creators have a responsibility to add net value to the world, to further the conversation and stay connected to the present, which is always and ever the only reality. And before you think I'm done, there's a final word for you contrarians out there, and I know you're out there because I know some of you. You may think you're staying true to yourself by keeping your sounds and structures and lyrics and production values and other facets and modes of expression in a realm that's safest and most familiar to you, but you're not. What you're staying true to is a version of yourself that doesn't exist anymore, in a context that doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer connected to your present experiences or anyone else's present experience. And that's why nobody listens to your music, or very few people do. My challenge to any of you creators who have fallen out of touch with music of the last 5, 10, 20, 30, even 40 years, some of you, to the point where you're convinced that nothing good or worthy has even happened in those intervening years, my challenge is go listen randomly to anything from even the last 10 years. Catch yourself up somehow. It's not as hard or painful as you think and doesn't take anywhere near as long as your brain is saying, oh man, I haven't listened to new music in so long. Where do I even start? You know where you start? The first new song you hear. You don't like it? Do a second new song. And I'm talking 30 seconds. Survey it. The entire process might take 20 minutes. And before you know it, you're more caught up than maybe somebody 10 years younger than you are. I 100% guarantee you will be inspired multiple times, and it will awaken and enrich your creative process and your music in ways you never would have accessed being stuck in the past and stuck to your usual tropes. This also applies to any of you who only listen to one or two genres, or only the old bands and artists you love, or who think if you create a certain kind of music, every element of that has to adhere to what's come before. Music is not a genre. And nostalgia is the silent killer. I had to repeat that. That's from the main episode. I hope if you're a music creator, you've gotten something from this. It's maybe shocked you a little, and it's maybe challenged you to think of ways in which you've become stale. I ask myself this all the time. And yes, there's a pitfall of trying to make everything new and different. That can go awry as well. But if you can find that sweet spot where you're pulling on things from your own past and the past of the world and bringing it into a new context, then you will never run out of ideas. And you'll see your career move forward as well. So I hope that's helped. Thank you for hanging with me, and I'll talk to you next week.